Welcome to Financially Speaking, brought to you by Buska Retirement Solutions and its affiliate firms. We offer retirement, tax, and legacy planning from a dedicated family-built team. In today's episode, we'll take a closer look at how financial advisors act as a first line of defense, helping protect their clients from scams, watching for signs of cognitive decline, and collaborating with family members to preserve long-term financial security, and what to do if you have to take a required minimum distribution. And now for our weekly question and answer segment.
Welcome back to Financially Speaking. Today I'm here with Cole Bruner and Ryan Pekka of Buska Retirement Solutions and Buska Wealth Management. And in this segment, we're taking a closer look at how financial advisors act as the first line of defense, protecting their clients from scams, watching for signs of cognitive decline, and collaborating with family members to preserve long-term financial security. Thanks for joining us today.
Of course.
I don't know if there's a topic that's probably more prevalent. I get calls on my cell phone 3 times a day from somebody offering something that doesn't seem that right.
Right.
How can you help protect your clients from financial scams, elder abuse, all these types of things?
I think it begins with education. Like you said, there's, so many different ways of people potentially trying to scam us now out of our money and access our accounts and all of these different things. And it's evolved over the course of time. I mean, things have gotten much more difficult to know whether something you're experiencing is a scam or if it's legit. And so I think it starts with educating people on some of the common scams because, we've had some clients that have called us after the fact and have fallen victim to some of those different, operations from scammers, whether they be, domestic or overseas, whatever it might be. But there is that concern that if something doesn't seem right, it probably isn't,
Or at least worth looking into.
Right, absolutely. If you get a call from your grandchild and they're, asking for you to send them money on a gift card or something like that, well, that maybe seems a little sketchy, So if something seems off, do your due diligence. Don't immediately send money or, go buy a gift card or whatever it might be. Reach out to your loved ones, talk to your family about the situation. And like I said, there's tons of different ones out there that you have to be aware of. And so we try to really educate people on what we're seeing and what we've experienced and what other clients have communicated to us and what we're even experiencing in our own personal lives. Because like you said, same thing. I get 2-3 calls a day, I don't answer any of them, but nonetheless, I know that they're out there and they happen regularly, and you just have to be your best advocate for that.
Yeah, I think the most calls I get are from scammers.
Right, exactly.
Maybe that's a social problem with me. So I would imagine that a lot of these scammers target elderly folks because at some point you can be cognitively inclined. I think we've all had a story or known someone that it's happened to. What are some signs, you guys work with retirees all day long,
right.
What are some signs, red flags that cause you to notice that they might be starting a cognitive issue?
Absolutely. So with our clients, we obviously build a relationship with them that often is several years long, get very familiar with kind of their normal habits, money habits, things like that. So the first thing we look for is any sort of unusual withdrawals, right? So if they're making an unusual larger withdrawal, we tend to ask them what that money is going to be used for, making sure it's not something like a scam or the new one that's you have unpaid tolls. I think I got one that said I had one in Wisconsin where there are no tolls the other day. Yeah. So making sure that the things they're pulling out for make sense, or if they're taking more money than usual, we're asking them, some questions that understand that. So you're looking for unusual behavior. That's kind of one of the first signs we see. Confusion is another big one. Just from personal experiences, family members that have had those cognitive declines, just repeating themselves a lot. So saying the same information to you kind of over and over again, like it's new to you. That's one of the signs that's kind of an immediate tipping point for us. And then again, just general confusion or uncomfortability in situations that you used to be comfortable in before. So there's going to be lots of different things we look at. There's going to be some things we'd put in place already. Trusted contacts, obviously, if they have a spouse, talking to that spouse, and hopefully they can give us some. If they're an individual, though, we always ask for a trusted contact to list on there. So if they do start exhibiting some of those behaviors, we can either A, point it out to that trusted contact, or ask them if they've noticed any of those behaviors as well, so that we've got a more complete picture. Obviously, the hour or two we're spending with them here and there isn't necessarily their whole life, and we're talking about confusing topics to them. sometimes in general. So making sure it's not kind of a one-off.
That's a good point too. Oftentimes their children end up they're around them a lot more than you guys are, but you guys could certainly pick up some great flags because you do see behavior and then see something random to help tell the children. How can you help work with the kids of the clients and reach that balance of not being nosy, but trying to help them?
Yeah,
the right thing.
No, I see what you mean, and I think it kind of comes down to having the conversation, maybe with both parties involved. Maybe if you as we as a financial professional are recognizing some potential cognitive decline concerns, we can encourage them to bring a child in and meet with both of them to go through some of these topics, especially if we're changing anything in their financial situation, or like Ryan said, they're requesting odd withdrawals, or they're making strange requests, or maybe even if they've had a shift in mentality, like sometimes how they respond to things from an emotional perspective shifts, and we just kind of notice that doesn't seem typical for that particular person, because like Ryan said, we work with these clients for years and years, and we really get to know them, and sometimes we'll just see something seems a little off about this situation, and we've experienced that in the past. And so I think it begins with making sure there's trusted contacts on file, making sure that we're reaching out and having those meaningful conversations with those trusted contacts, and then encouraging the client to bring in that person when they come in for meetings, so that way we can really make sure that they're both on the same page, and especially that way if they are confused about any recommendations or anything going on in their financial situation, we've now got another person involved that can help bridge that knowledge gap and help re-explain it to them in maybe another way that they might understand better or be able to retain better. So I think it's just getting other people involved is a really important part if we are recognizing those signals, because we have to do something. We don't want to just let them make potential mistakes or anything. It's our job to be their guardian, their shepherd, and when it comes to making sure they're doing all of the things that they should be doing and not making mistakes that might not be able to come back from.
Sure, and I think the easier path would just be managing their money, and if they want to spend it, they spend it. But as a decent human, you guys dig in and try and figure out what's going on.
Of course.
Are there protections that you can put in place where, I would imagine the first time you ask me where my money's going is okay, but eventually I might say it's none of your business, or cognitive decline sometimes people can get a little angrier.
Yeah.
How do you strike that balance of, okay, they can't make decisions anymore, someone else has to? Are there something that a client can put in place to say, you tell me when I got to throw the towel in?
I think it kind of boils down to that trusted contact. In terms of the trusted contact on file, it is a person that client has given us permission to communicate with in the event that we sense something is wrong. As a financial professional, there's not necessarily a situation where we can tell a client that they can't do something per se, but we can have those conversations with other people that they trust to make sure that there's other people that are aware of what we see as concerns, and then they can help address that, especially from a medical perspective. Maybe it's encouraging them for a memory test or something along those lines, and then if they are deemed incapacitated to a certain degree, of course those letters of incapacity get implemented, and then powers of attorney go into effect. And so now that power of attorney would be the person that we would be working with to make those broader financial decisions, so that way it's not left up to the person that might be struggling a little bit with making those decisions because of a cognitive decline.
Good. Well, I appreciate you guys helping out with that. It certainly seems above and beyond the call of duty for a financial advisor. So
sure.
Thank you very much. After a quick timeout, we'll go even further into the advisor's role as a financial guardian, especially as clients age, from creating safeguards to initiating difficult but necessary family conversations. And we'll explore how advisors keep their clients protected and their plans on track. Don't go anywhere.
And now back to our weekly question and answer segment.
Before the timeout, we were digging into how financial advisors can play a powerful role in protecting their clients, not just from market risk, but from outside threats and vulnerabilities too. Before the break, Cole and Ryan touched on red flags that signal a client might be struggling. Let's expand on that. Now, I would imagine that you gentlemen have seen signs of this happening before, and you make those types of phone calls or or try to help people and have conversations. You talked a little bit about powers of attorney. Talk a little bit about the tools that one could use to really kind of solidify a plan like this.
Well, I mean, I think it boils down to having the right documentation in place. You know, I mean, typically when you complete an estate plan, like a will or a trust or anything along those lines, oftentimes whomever is helping you draft those documents will also help you to draft a power of attorney for healthcare and finance. And the importance of having those documents is really, I mean, unmeasurable, because you don't necessarily know that you'll need it until you need it.
Right.
You know, I mean, none of us
plan. Which could be too late.
Right, exactly. I mean, I don't think anybody plans to be incapacitated at any point in their life, right? And so if you don't have those documents in place, the problem is now there's no one that's legally documented to make those decisions for you. And so the only strategy that you can pursue is then guardianship. And that can be costly and time intensive. And you know, I mean, it could,
fight.
Yeah, it could create a fight. And so having that stuff outlined well in advance while you still have your mental faculties and you can make a good decision on who you think would be the best person to guide those decision-making processes for you, having that on paper is incredibly important. And so we always say that some of the most important legal documents that you should have in your possession during your adult life, post-18 life, is a power of attorney, for healthcare and finance. Because if you don't have that, nobody can make your financial decisions, and that might be something as simple as paying your bills, balancing your checkbook, you know, checking on your investments, all of those types of things, but also your healthcare decisions, because certainly if you're incapacitated, you're not able to make healthcare or financial decisions. Right. And so you've got to have somebody to do both, and it doesn't have to be the same person. It can be two different people for each different category. But having those documents becomes really important if life changes to the degree where you're not able to make those decisions for yourself.
I know that's one thing we were talking about too, is when you ask the question of who would be your health contact and your financial, that sometimes those are different.
Yeah.
I never really thought of it that way, but
yeah, absolutely. We've seen that many times.
When is the right time to involve this trusted contact or powers of attorney? Because, I mean, I don't know if it's a fear, but like, I don't want to give powers of attorney to my kids and one day I forget where my car keys are and pretty soon they got my checking account, right?
Right.
When do you start to do this process?
Sure.
You should have an active relationship with those people, right? You shouldn't have a power of attorney to someone you don't trust, or you think if you lose your car keys one time is going to really affect you negatively in that way. So it's always recommended right away. The more involved they can be from the start, the better picture they're going to have, better understanding. Again, the worst thing we can do is bring you in at the very last minute and try to catch you up to speed. It's going to be very difficult to explain that to them and have them have a full understanding, so they're also going to be confused at that point. So we typically recommend you bring your children, or at least let them know, really the focus for us is trying to get those multiple generations involved, talking about what next steps look like. That's part of the process we go through from the very beginning with our clients, and talking about, hey, where are you at with these things? Where are you at in estate planning? Who is next in line and how much of this do they know? And then as they continue to age, making that more and more prevalent or more and more important to them, because that's going to be the next stages for them really in life is who do I want this to go to, and who do I need to take care of me if I'm no longer able to, or my spouse is no longer able to, because those are going to be the biggest things. Looking at even long-term care, the most popular version of that is in-home care. So when you have those types of situations, you really need to be set up well in advance. So the earlier you can get them on board, the better it's going to be in that long run.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we use very regularly with our clients to keep them connected to what's going on in their financial life, but also their family, especially in a situation where cognitive decline might be in play, or if a power of attorney needs to be activated, is our generational vault. The vault is designed to give online access to the client, but it also allows them to delegate access to a loved one. So in the event that, let's say, one of your children is going to take care of things for you if you were to be incapacitated, well, how convenient would it be if they had a login to your generational vault where they can see all of your accounts, they can see all the records, they have access to all of your important legal documents like your will, your trust, your powers of attorney, which obviously they're going to need to get their hands on in the event that they they need to make financial decisions, because they're going to have to supply that to the various different companies they're working with, right? And so I think making it easier for that information to be readily available can be really valuable, because if not that, then they're struggling with, a parent potentially who's got cognitive decline concerns, and now they're trying to find important documents in their house. Where is the copy of that POA
shoebox that I put it in?
Right, exactly. Did the attorney that drafted it retire, and now we can't get a copy from them, or whatever it might be. So, I mean, there's all of these different potential what-ifs that could come up, and so that's why we encourage our clients to keep those important documents in their vaults, because then they're readily available for themselves, but also readily available for loved ones in the event that they need to get their hands on it.
And that's something you guys provide complimentary to your clients too, right?
Absolutely.
So it doesn't even cost them anything to do it?
Exactly.
Probably ups the usage a bit then, huh?
It does.
That's good. How does the proactive communication work then? Let's kind of take it back full circle. Proactive communication, talking to the clients, how does that come back and help against the scams and frauds that are going on out there?
Well, I think, making sure that we're educating on what the potential scams might be, but also in terms of a client that might be dealing with cognitive decline, making sure that their loved ones are monitoring their communications, whether that be online communications, whether that be, phone calls, text messages, those types of things, checking call logs and things like that, just to make sure that they're not doing anything out of the ordinary, or having conversations with someone overseas or something along those lines. I mean, there's a lot of risk factors that we have to be aware of. And so just being the best advocate that you can for your loved one that might be struggling with some of those, mental faculties or cognitive issues, I think it's really important for you to just do your due diligence to make sure that you're watching their back. Because again, they might not be making the best decisions for themselves. And unfortunately, that does make them more susceptible to potential hackers, scammers, all of that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we spent a lot of time talking about, Roth conversions and rates of return and taxation and the money side of it. On the non-money side of it, what does a good, well-rounded financial safety plan look like over here? Like what are the major pieces or things that you think you need to have in place?
Sure. So you should always have a will or a trust. Basically, you need to have what's lined up after you pass away. That's going to be something that's always really important with those. Those are kind of your last or legacy plan there as well. So on top of it, while you're still alive, though, you need to have kind of your family members involved so they can understand where you're at, what your wishes are. Having those conversations are something that we encourage clients to do. It's something that I do with my family. My parents, as they get older, it's more important for me to understand what their wishes are, because again, that does run in my family, that cognitive decline is a possibility for them. So if they're not able to communicate that to me later in life, being proactive about it, things like that can be really important. We as advisors are just here to help facilitate those conversations. They're not always the easiest, they're not always pleasant to have, but they're very important to have. So really when we're putting that in, we talk to them about it. It doesn't necessarily come from us and it's not part of the plan, but we also make sure that when we're building a plan for them, just looking at the financial parts, we've talked about those, we've built a plan that can last their lifetime. Again, it's not an end point when you retire. It's 20, 30 years in the future. There's a chance you live to 100 years old. It's not uncommon. Medical advances keep getting better. So making sure that plan is set up to last them a lifetime and maybe even further than they think their lifetime will go is really important. Building in those safety nets, again, we don't just release client funds if we get an email from them either. It's, I like to hear their voice on the phone, make sure we can have at least a quick conversation before we do those things for them so that we can confirm, one, they haven't been scammed or possibly even hacked on their emails as well.
Yeah,
good.
Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate you guys taking that extra step to protect people out there.
Certainly.
Again, it's a conversation most people don't want to have, so somebody's got to do it, right?
Absolutely.
Thanks again. We'll be back later on for more Financially Speaking right after this.
And now our Financially Speaking weekly desk segment.
Welcome back to Financially Speaking. I'm Sue Buska from Buska Retirement Solutions. Joining me today is Logan Waller. Now today, Logan and I are going to talk about what you should do if you have to take a required minimum distribution.
That's right. Kiplinger's published an article titled, "You're Stuck Taking RMDs, Now What?" That offers some tips for people taking required minimum distributions.
Logan, why don't you tell our viewers what required minimum distributions are?
Great idea, Sue. When you have money in a 401k or a traditional IRA, you have to start taking minimum distributions when you hit a certain age.
And why might our viewers prefer not to take RMDs?
Well, it effectively makes you spend down your savings. That's a reason for that. The federal government didn't want rich people using retirement accounts to amass huge amounts of tax-free wealth that they would then transfer to their beneficiaries. So 401ks are essentially an agreement between consumers and the government. You can save money tax-free on the condition that you use the money to fund your retirement.
Well, it sounds pretty fair when you say it like that.
Right. I'm not saying that RMDs are unfair, just that they can present some problems that retirees sometimes need to work around.
And what kind of problems are those?
Well, when you start taking RMDs, that additional money can push you into higher income tax brackets, which means you have to pay Medicare surcharges. Also, you fund your 401k with pre-tax money. When you take the money out, taxes come due. So, RMDs can mean you're paying more in taxes and surcharges.
Okay, I can see why some people might want to find ways to avoid taking RMDs. Now, can everyone do that?
Unfortunately, no. But that doesn't mean you can't take a look at your options. First, you can make qualified charitable distributions to reduce your tax liabilities.
Now, how does that all work?
You're quizzing me today, Sue. First, choose a registered charity that you care about. Then make sure they are eligible to receive QCDs. Then you just have to fill out some forms with your retirement plan to transfer the funds.
Now, what if my RMDs are substantial?
If your RMDs are large, QCDs can help, but only so much. The 2025 QCD limit is $108,000 for singles. For married couples filing jointly, it's $216,000.
Now, what about reinvesting RMDs? Now, can I do that?
Yes, you can. RMDs mean you have to take money out of your retirement account. It doesn't mean you have to spend it. If you don't need the money for any immediate expenses, you can consider putting it in a taxable brokerage account.
Okay, so that could be a way to leave a tax-efficient inheritance for my family.
That's exactly right.
Now, could I also put the money into an interest-bearing savings account?
Sure. You may not get as much in return by doing that, but it could be the safer option.
Well, what about gifts, Logan?
Oh, Sue, you don't have to get me anything.
I was talking about RMDs.
Oh, I see. Well, you can gift up to $19,000 per year if you have to take RMDs and want to use some of that money to help family. You can certainly do that.
Well, that's a nice option if you can afford it.
Of course. Another nice option is to use that RMD money to take a family trip. After all, if you have to take out that money anyways, you might as well use it for something fun. If your RMDs are especially high, you could use the money to fund a family trip.
Oh, who wouldn't love an all-expense-paid trip?
Talking about those gifts, I would love one, Sue. Well, I suppose there are some family members who'd find something to complain about, even on a free trip. If there's a known complainer in your family and you don't want them along for the ride, maybe opt for a trip with just your spouse or a solo trip.
Well, that makes sense to me. What's next on the list?
Well, next is to start a business.
Well, wait a minute. I've just retired. Why would I want to start a business? That's so much work.
Yes, it is. Some folks have a hard time with the transition. They don't know what to do with themselves when they are not working. Starting a business can help people reestablish a sense of purpose. It may not make a ton of money, but it could be a source of additional income.
So you invest your RMDs in a business and you make that money back.
That's right.
Well, that makes sense for people with an entrepreneurial spirit, but some folks just want to spend time in the garden when they retire.
And that's perfectly fine.
Now, couldn't starting a business potentially be risky?
Sure. There are always risks. If I were advising someone who wanted to start a business but also expressed a lot of risk aversion, or I knew they were potentially going to need money for other big expenses, I might ask them to rethink about it over a little bit.
Well, that seems sensible to me. Now, what about aging in place? Can RMDs help with that?
First, let's tell the audience what aging in place means.
Aging in place means you stay in your own home rather than moving to an assisted living facility or a nursing home.
That's right. For seniors, that often means retrofitting the home to accommodate mobility issues. You may need to install things like stair lifts, ramps, grab bars, and often features that help with accessibility. RMDs can fund those projects.
What if my house already has accessibility features, but I'm not sure I'm going to stay in it?
Well, you still may want to make upgrades to make the house more marketable if you decide to sell it. RMDs can fund those upgrades too.
Well, what if there's something I've wanted for a really long time, like some bespoke wallpaper or a terrazzo floor?
Sure. If those things will make your home more enjoyable while you're in it, do it. And you can afford them, well, why not?
Well, is that everything on the list?
Actually, there's one more thing. Kiplinger included in the article. It says to invest in your health.
Oh, that's a good idea. Maintaining strength is important as we age.
Well, that's exactly right. And as the article points out, you're never too old to hire a professional trainer or invest in some equipment for your home gym.
Well, I'd take it one step further and say it's never too late to learn something new. So if you want to try something like martial arts or synchronized swimming, go for it. But maybe check with a physician first.
Synchronized swimming.
It looks like fun. They're always smiling.
That must be true. I think that's part of the act, though.
Yeah, well, we're just about out of time for this act. Is there anything else we should cover before we sign off, Logan?
Just that you should talk with a financial services professional if you're concerned about your required minimum distributions. If you're thinking of converting your 401k to a Roth, which would let you avoid RMDs, you should definitely check with a financial services professional.
Well, that's a great point. Roth conversions can be a great strategy, but aren't necessarily the right move for everyone.
Right on, Sue. Viewers, if you have any questions about required minimum distributions, Roth conversions, or your overall financial strategy, contact us at retirewithbuska.com or call 715-355-4445. We'll be right back with more Financially Speaking after this.
At Buska, our goal is to streamline the retirement planning process to help you move towards a successful retirement with confidence and ease. Through our 3 companies, we create personalized comprehensive retirement plans by integrating investment management, income planning, tax strategies, estate planning, as well as health insurance and Medicare planning, all under one roof. Call today or visit retirewithbuska.com to schedule your complimentary, no-obligation consultation or to get a second opinion review of your current plan. Let's make retirement planning easier together.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of Financially Speaking. We're glad you were able to join us today, and we hope you learned some useful retirement tips along the way.
On today's show, we covered a number of important topics, and hopefully we did so in a manner that was easy for you to understand. This is the same way we communicate to our clients when we meet with them in person. Remember, with the help of the right financial services professional, you can create a quality retirement, and our team is here to help. Right now may be a great time to get a second opinion on your retirement plan. Call us at 715-355-4445 or go to retirewithbuska.com to continue your retirement education, catch up on previous episodes of our TV and radio show, or schedule your complimentary, no-obligation consultation.
If you have any questions or comments about today's show, call us at 715-355-4445 or feel free to send us an email at info@retirewithbuska.com. Join us next week at the same time and same place for another episode of Financially Speaking.